Mentioned to me as we were upstairs, it was going to be a tough act to follow with Neil and Cinder. So anyway, well, my name is Semko. I was one of the music composers on Due South for the pilot movie and the duration of all the shows. I guess we did the pilot in really the fall of '93. At the first 40 shows, I worked with Jack Lenz and John McCarthy, and for the last 26, I just worked with Jack. It was just Jack and myself the last 26. And started off, I guess my involvement in the show happened really, I was playing in a band, and we still play occasionally, called the Northern Pikes. And we're a Canadian band, had a good track record here in Canada, and toured all over Canada and the United States. And what happened was the band was kind of breaking up. It was, I guess, the summer of 1993. And the drummer from the group called me and said, he said, I had a call from somebody, from our agent, which was the S.L. Feldman and Associates agency. And it was a lady named Janet York. And basically, Donnie, the drummer, said, the producer apparently likes the sound of the Northern Pikes, was wondering if we wanted to try and write a theme song for this potential series that's being shot. Right then, they were shooting up in the Yukon. And since the band was in disarray and was falling apart, he said, well, are you interested in doing this? And I thought, well, let's see, okay. So I actually called up Janet, the agent, and over the phone, she described to me the plot of the show, and the rough idea of the Mountie from way up north pursuing his father's killer down to Chicago, and going through the plot in a very rough way. And as she was describing this to me over the phone, I started getting all these musical ideas for, oh, this could be cool, this could be cool, this could be cool. So I was kind of half listening and sort of jotting ideas down and writing chords and things like that. And as soon as I got off the phone, I just went on a whirlwind, and I basically wrote the theme song within probably half an hour. It just came to me, it all worked. And so then, I guess probably within a week or two of doing that, I got some other musicians who happened to be two of them were former members of the Pikes, and one was a guy who had played with us for quite a while. And we went into a little studio and did a rough demo of the song, which I call it a rough demo, but ultimately most of those tracks were used in the final theme song for Due South. People didn't want to fix it because it wasn't broken, and they liked the way it sounded, so we ended up keeping that. So anyway, I submitted that to them. I didn't hear anything back for a while. I thought, oh, I don't know if they like it or not. And you tend to become a bit, not necessarily jaded, but sometimes you try lots of things sometimes in showbiz, and if they work, great. If they don't, then you sort of go, okay, well, we gave that a try, and see what happens. Anyway, so I ended up calling the agent, Janet, and she called me right back and said, oh, I was going to call you today because apparently they really like the theme song. They love it. They want to use it if the show goes to series. And the producer, Paul Haggis, is wondering if you're interested in trying to do some scoring. And I said, well, I've never done that before. I have no technical knowledge of that. She said, well, what we'll do is we'll send you a videotape of some scenes from the show, and you can put some music to it in whatever way you like, and nothing ventured, nothing gained. Might as well try it and see what happens. So I ended up doing 3 pieces of music, and one was a snowmobile chase, and which was it's funny because the music, I had no idea really what was going on. There really wasn't much dialogue or sound going on, so I just saw these snowmobiles chasing each other, or the snowmobile, the whole scene that happens in the pilot. And I ended up putting kind of like surfing music to that. It didn't make a lot of sense really, but one that worked really well was this scene where Fraser is in the pilot movie looking for clues, and he's examining things, and this is when he's up north. And that was when basically at that point, I wrote what became a cue that people know as, and by a cue, in TV or film, every piece of music that you do as score, or anything really, that's to do with the picture is called a music cue. So I ended up doing, which I didn't know that at the time. I was just writing music to this picture. And that ended up being what was called cabin music on one of the soundtrack albums. And kept it very organic. I mean, the vibe I had was really, I was trying to follow the personality of the Mountie and keeping things very acoustic. And so using acoustic guitar, harmonica, trying to not get too over the top with electronic instruments or anything like that. And because I was really quite ignorant of the technology at the time, it was loosely done in terms of, wasn't dead on, and I didn't know how to use SMPTE, which is the time code that you use to sync things up exactly with the picture and stuff. So it was done very much in an organic way, which I think worked well, because I really followed the picture of what was going on, followed the scene. And anyway, lo and behold, I guess it was probably a month later, I got a call actually late at night from Jeff King and Paul Haggis, who were together, and he said, "We really like what you're doing here. Are you interested in possibly working on the score for this pilot movie?" And I said, "Well, sure, I'm up for anything. Well, I'll give it a try." And I didn't, and they said, "Well, would you be averse to working with other people who are more experienced at doing this?" And I said, "No, of course not, because I really was very new at doing that." So anyway, they ended up, to make a long story short, they flew me out to Toronto. I met with Jack and John, who were to become my fellow composers. I didn't know them very well at that time, although we since became very good friends. And we had what was called a spotting session, which is where you sit down, look at the picture by picture, I mean the film or the movie or the episode, and at that point it was the pilot episode, and started discussing ideas about what could go where and where music should start and stop and what the vibe should be and the feeling, the emotion that the viewer should get from that. And we ended up sort of locking ourselves away for a couple of weeks and working like crazy on this and throwing ideas around and seeing what would work and what didn't work. And finally, and Paul would come in quite regularly, take a listen to what we were doing. He was really cool because he gave us a lot of room to experiment with things, but at the same time, when he really found something that he liked, he was very definite about it. He would go, "Yes, that's the thing that's working, this is great, and we should, yes, continue on this path, this is what you're doing, this is the right kind of thing." So, I think the very first cue we wrote was the very first cue in the pilot movie, which was the Fraser Sr., and it's where he gets shot, basically. And yeah, that was sort of that was the first thing, and leading into that next aerial scene over the mountains, which introduces the which everybody knows as one of the key themes of Due South. And anyway, we thumped away on that, did the session for it, finished it, and then it was left for about a month. Then I got a call and they said, "Okay, well, you need to come back to Toronto." I was living in Saskatoon at the time. They said, "You need to come back because we've changed a bunch of the stuff in the show, so the music will have to change accordingly." So went back, did another draft of the music, were able to keep some of the music cues, and did a second draft, and then ultimately there was a little break between that, and then a third draft, which we didn't have to change that much. It was becoming more refined. And I guess that really was late fall of '93 that we finished doing that, and then really nothing was happening because they were waiting for an air date for it. And the important thing was to get it on CBS in the United States at a good time slot. And obviously there's a lot of respect for Paul and his previous track record, because they gave it, I believe it was a pretty good slot, and it achieved really good ratings and did really well.